What would happen if Africa banned uranium exports to France? First, take a look at the situation of a nation that exports most of its resources to France.
Now we're ending a show with what the numbers are saying. Take a look at these numbers, 189 out of 189. No, that's not my exam score. That is actually Republic of Niger's ranking on the Global Human Development Index. Niger ranks last on the Global Human Development Index.
France is heavily dependent on Africa for its resources, especially uranium from Niger. However, after years of exploitation, Niger has grown weary of these ties and has decided to revoke the licenses of French companies to extract its resources.
Niger suspended uranium and gold exports to France, one of its big trading partners, and we know it's the 7th largest uranium producer around the world. It's also suspended the issuance of government bonds in the international market.
This bold move could send shockwaves through the West, which is already grappling with an energy crisis. So, what does this decision mean for Niger and France? Let's find out. Is it possible that once powerful colonial empires crumble under the weight of their arrogance? Where African nations, long exploited for their natural resources, finally stand tall, reclaiming their sovereignty and dictating the terms of their future. Niger's military government has banned the license of Orano, a French nuclear giant that has been operating one of the world's largest uranium mines in Niger. This decision comes because of Orano's repeated failures to meet deadlines and fulfill its commitments, leading to significant financial losses and raising serious concerns about France's energy security. But after the ban, France will pay the price of all the wrong it has done on Niger's land. But we need to know the historical context to understand how much will this impact France. So, what is the historical context behind Niger's decision, and why does it matter? To fully grasp the significance of Niger's bold move, we must dig deep into the complex and often dark history that has shaped the relationship between France and its former colonies in Africa. The roots of this relationship can be traced back to the 19th century, when European powers, driven by a combination of greed, racism, and a misguided sense of superiority, carved up the African continent during the infamous Scramble for Africa. France, one of the major players in this imperialist frenzy, seized vast swaths of territory across West and Central Africa, including present-day Niger. Under French colonial rule, African nations were subjected to brutal exploitation, with their people forced into labor and their natural resources plundered to fuel the growing industrial demands of Europe. The discovery of uranium in Niger in the early 20th century only intensified France's interest in the region, as uranium became a critical resource for France's burgeoning nuclear energy program. Orano, formerly known as Areva, the French state-owned nuclear company, has been at the center of this extraction enterprise, operating in Niger for decades. The uranium mined in Niger has been a cornerstone of France's energy policy, enabling the country to maintain its status as a global leader in nuclear power. However, this relationship has been anything but equitable. While France has benefited enormously from Niger's uranium, the people of Niger have seen little in return. The wealth generated by this valuable resource has largely flowed out of the country, leaving behind a legacy of poverty, environmental degradation, and social unrest. Niger's decision to revoke Orano's license must be understood in this historical context. It is not just a reaction to a company failing to meet its obligations. It is a rejection of a deeply entrenched system of exploitation that has persisted for over a century. This move represents a broader assertion of sovereignty by Niger, a declaration that the era of one-sided relationships is over. Niger is no longer willing to play the role of a passive resource supplier for Western powers. It is demanding a fair share of the wealth generated by its resources. But how does the revocation of Orano's license impact France's energy security? Here's a reminder to please like and share the video, and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. France's energy security has long been intertwined with its nuclear power industry. With approximately 40% of the country's electricity generated by nuclear reactors, France has positioned itself as a global leader in nuclear energy. This reliance on nuclear power has provided France with a level of energy independence and stability that few other nations can claim. However, this stability is predicated on a consistent and reliable supply of uranium, a resource that France does not possess in significant quantities within its borders. Niger's uranium has been an important factor in France's nuclear energy strategy. The country's vast uranium deposits have provided the raw material necessary to fuel France's reactors, allowing it to maintain a robust and reliable energy supply. The revocation of Orano's license, therefore, poses a serious threat to France's energy security. Without access to Niger's uranium, France faces the prospect of reduced nuclear output, potential energy shortages, and increased dependence on alternative, less stable sources of energy. The economic implications for France are equally dire. The nuclear industry is a critical component of the French economy, supporting thousands of jobs and generating significant revenue. A disruption in the supply of uranium could lead to higher energy prices, putting additional strain on French consumers and businesses. Furthermore, the loss of Niger's uranium could undermine France's ability to export nuclear technology and expertise, weakening its position in the global energy market. But the implications of Niger's decision extend beyond France's borders. France's reliance on nuclear energy has been a key factor in its ability to maintain its status as a major global power. The country's energy independence has allowed it to pursue an ambitious foreign policy, projecting power and influence around the world. However, without access to a stable supply of uranium, France's ability to maintain this level of influence could be severely compromised. Moreover, Niger's decision could have a ripple effect across the African continent. Other African nations, inspired by Niger's bold stance, may begin to reassert control over their resources, challenging the dominance of Western powers. This could lead to a significant reconfiguration of global power dynamics, with Africa playing a more central role in determining the terms of its engagement with the rest of the world. An important question here is, what does Niger's decision mean for the future of African sovereignty and the continent's relationship with the West? Niger's decision to revoke Orano's license is emblematic of a broader shift in the balance of power between Africa and the West. For centuries, African nations have been relegated to the role of passive suppliers of raw materials, with little say in how their resources are used or how the wealth generated by those resources is distributed. This dynamic has been reinforced by a system of economic dependency, where African nations are forced to rely on Western aid, investment, and technology to develop their economies. However, this system is beginning to unravel, as African nations increasingly assert their sovereignty and demand a greater share of the wealth generated by their resources. Niger's decision is a clear signal that African nations are no longer willing to accept the status quo. By taking control of its uranium resources, Niger is setting a precedent for other resource-rich nations to follow. This shift towards greater sovereignty and economic independence has the potential to transform Africa's relationship with the West. No longer content to be the suppliers of raw materials, African nations are seeking to build their industries, develop their technologies, and create their wealth. This could lead to a reconfiguration of global supply chains, with Africa taking on a more central role in the global economy. Furthermore, this move towards greater sovereignty could have significant implications for the West's approach to Africa. For too long, Western nations have viewed Africa as a source of cheap resources, a place where they could extract wealth without giving much in return. Niger's decision challenges this mindset, forcing the West to confront the reality that Africa is no longer willing to play by the old rules. The rise of African sovereignty is also likely to have broader geopolitical implications. As African nations take control of their resources and assert their independence, they are likely to seek new alliances and partnerships, both within Africa and with other regions of the world. This could lead to the emergence of a more multipolar world, where power is more evenly distributed and where Africa's voice is heard more clearly in international forums. And how might France and other Western nations respond to Niger's decision? The revocation of Orano's license by Niger is a wake-up call for France and other Western nations. It signals that the old ways of doing business in Africa are no longer viable, and that a new approach is needed if they wish to maintain their influence on the continent. However, the response from the West is likely to be multifaceted, involving a combination of diplomatic efforts, economic incentives, and, potentially, coercive measures. Diplomatically, France may seek to negotiate with Niger's military government to restore Orano's license or to secure alternative agreements that would allow it to continue accessing Niger's uranium. This could involve offering economic aid, investment in infrastructure, or other incentives designed to win back Niger's favor. However, such efforts may be met with resistance, particularly if Niger and other African nations see this as an opportunity to break free from the influence of their former colonial masters. Economically, Western nations might attempt to diversify their sources of uranium, seeking new suppliers in other parts of the world. This could involve investing in mining operations in other African nations, or even looking to countries outside of Africa. However, such efforts would take time and money, and there is no guarantee that they would be successful in replacing the lost supply from Niger. In addition to these diplomatic and economic strategies, there is the possibility that Western nations could resort to more coercive measures, such as sanctions or political pressure, in an attempt to force Niger to reverse its decision. However, such actions could backfire, further alienating African nations and accelerating the trend towards greater sovereignty and independence. Western nations must tread carefully, as heavy-handed tactics could only serve to deepen the divide between Africa and the West. As Western nations grapple with how to respond to Niger's decision, they must also consider the broader implications for their global influence. The rise of African sovereignty represents a challenge to the existing power structures that have long defined international relations. If Western nations fail to adapt to this new reality, they risk being sidelined as Africa forges new alliances and partnerships with other regions of the world. This moment represents a critical juncture for the West. Will they continue to cling to the outdated models of exploitation and control, or will they embrace a new approach based on mutual respect and partnership? The answer to this question will determine the future of Africa's relationship with the West, as well as the West's role in the global order. So, could Niger's bold move signal the beginning of a new era in international relations? Niger's decision to revoke Orano's license could indeed be the harbinger of a new era in international relations. For far too long, Africa has been relegated to the margins of global power structures, seen primarily as a supplier of raw materials rather than a key player in its own right. This perception has been reinforced by the dominance of Western powers, who have dictated the terms of global trade, finance, and diplomacy for centuries. However, the tides are beginning to turn. As African nations assert their sovereignty and take control of their resources, they are positioning themselves to play a more central role in the global economy and international relations. This shift could have profound implications for the global order, potentially leading to a more multipolar world where power is more evenly distributed among regions. In this new era, Africa could become a major player in global supply chains, particularly in the critical sectors of energy, minerals, and agriculture. With the continent's vast natural resources, young and growing population, and increasing economic dynamism, Africa has the potential to drive global growth and innovation in the coming decades. This will require African nations to develop their industries, improve infrastructure, and build the human capital needed to compete on the global stage. At the same time, the rise of African sovereignty could challenge the existing global power structures. As African nations take on a more central role in international relations, they are likely to demand a greater voice in global governance, challenging the dominance of Western institutions and advocating for a more equitable global order. This could lead to significant changes in international organizations such as the United Nations, the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund, as African nations push for reforms that reflect their growing influence. The rise of African sovereignty also has implications for global alliances and partnerships. As African nations assert their independence, they are likely to seek new alliances and partnerships, both within Africa and with other regions of the world. This could lead to the emergence of new geopolitical blocs and a reconfiguration of global alliances, with Africa playing a more central role in global diplomacy and security. However, this new era will not come without challenges. African nations will need to navigate the complexities of global trade, manage the expectations of their populations, and build the infrastructure needed to support their economic ambitions. They will also need to address internal challenges such as corruption, political instability, and social inequality, which have long hampered development on the continent. But if they can overcome these challenges, the rewards could be significant, both for Africa and for the world as a whole. The rise of African sovereignty represents an opportunity to create a more just and equitable global order, where all nations have a say in how the world's resources are used and how the benefits of global economic growth are distributed. Niger's decision to revoke Orano's license is more than just a business dispute. It's a bold statement of sovereignty and a challenge to the old order. This move marks a turning point in the relationship between Africa and the West, signaling the end of an era of exploitation and the beginning of a new chapter defined by sovereignty, independence, and mutual respect. As African nations continue to assert their rights over their resources, the balance of power in international relations could begin to shift. This is not just a victory for Niger. It's a victory for Africa as a whole, and a sign that the continent is ready to take its rightful place on the global stage. The era of Western dominance in Africa is coming to an end, and a new era of African sovereignty and independence is beginning. This is a moment of profound change, not just for Africa, but for the world. As we move forward, we must embrace this new reality and work towards a future where all nations, regardless of their history or geography, have the opportunity to determine their destiny and contribute to the global community on equal terms. The era of nuclear colonialism is ending, and it's about time. Do you think the tables have turned for France? Will it be able to deal with the energy crisis without access to Niger's resources? Let us know in the comment section. Will Niger's move make the West reevaluate how it collaborates with Africa? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.